Oh, hiya! So, an American businessman and two French brothers walk into a bar. In the 1890s, the art of filmmaking was born. The real question is, which camera came first, Edison's kinetoscope or the Lumiere brothers' cinematograph? Given that Edison was a thieving turd, I'm inclined to believe that it was the brothers, and the cinematograph is the great-grandpappy of modern cameras anyway, so suck it, Edison. It didn't take too long, though, for cinema to make it to Japan. The first ever dedicated cinema theater, Denki-kan, which doesn't have anything to do with Donkey Kong, was opened in 1903 in Tokyo. At first, the majority of the films shown were imported French and English films, which were translated by a live performer called a benshi. Benshi were hugely popular. People would regularly go to the cinema, not for the films, but to see their favorite benshi perform. Unfortunately for them, they went the same way as silent film stars when talkies were introduced, which is a little tragic for them.
Pierre, you shouldn't have come.
Pierre, you shouldn't have come.
But so far as where most of the popular films go, cartoons were widely enjoyed. This can in part be attributed to the lack of obvious ethnicities in the cartoon characters as opposed to the live-action films, which, since they were imported from America and France, were mostly white people. Now, the title of Japan's first animator is generally given to Shimokawa Oten, whose first animated film, Imokawa Mukuzo, The Doorman, in 1917, may or may not have ever actually existed. So, we're not entirely clear on him. Build a time machine. Maybe we can find out. Regardless of when, where, or by who the first Japanese film animations were created, they didn't start out, for the most part, aimed at the age group you'd think. Following a moral panic after a French heist film called Zigomari rose to popularity and was attributed to causing many children to become much more mischievous, the Japanese created the regulations for inspection of magic lantern and moving picture shows in 1911 and the 1917 Tokyo Moving Pictures Entertainment Industry Control Regulations. And they set strict rules on what films can be shown to under 15s. Because of these rules, many animators didn't bother aiming their films towards children, as the risk that the film might be deemed too mature or mischievous for them far outweighed the amount of time and effort that went into making the films. Now, if we were to move on to the 1920s, there were two really big events that helped change the course of Japanese animation from the more traditional style that was popular to anime as we know and love it today. The first was the creation of Kitayama Eiga Seisaku Sho in 1921, which is now accepted to be the first ever Japanese animation studio. The second and much more tragic event was the Great Kanto earthquake in 1923. The 7.9 quake devastated Tokyo and Yokohama, but the worst part is that it hit just before lunchtime, and as a result it turned over thousands of lit stoves, resulting in massive fires destroying the wood and paper buildings all across the region, and resulting in over 100,000 deaths, and was the largest cause of death in pre-World War II Japan. And since the majority of the Japanese studios were located in Tokyo, almost all domestic films made before then were destroyed. That said, the fresh slate, so to speak, created by the quake actually led to a separation from the very traditional folk tales that were being retold over and over again to the parodies and satires of Western cartoons that had made their way to popularity in the vacuum of animated films post-quake. And that, boys and girls, were the very first baby steps on the road to Pokemon.
What? Oh, there it is!
Make sure you check back every week here on Ohio. I'm your host, Jacqueline Davis, and Obaya! In the 1890s, the art of filmmaking was born. The real question is, which camera came first? Edison's kinetoscope or the Lumiere brothers' cinematograph? That wasn't even a Japanese word. But it was French. It is very French.